Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
I still remember the exact moment my marriage ended. It wasn't a screaming match. No shattered dishes, no threats hurled in the heat of anger. Just a single sentence, spoken so casually, so carelessly, that it might as well have been an afterthought. Love isn't a transaction. She said it while lounging on the couch, scrolling through her phone, barely sparing me a glance. The words weren't meant to cut, but they did. They cut deep. I had just come home from a long day at work, one of those days that drained the life out of me. The kind where I spent hours navigating office politics, handling responsibilities that weren't even mine, and running on caffeine fumes just to make sure my paycheck kept flowing in, funding the life we had built together. I didn't complain. I never did. Providing for us, making sure we had a nice home, good food, vacations, and security was something I did because I wanted to. But something had shifted. Lately, I had been feeling more like a provider than a partner, more like an investor in a venture that only benefited one side. She had quit her job over a year ago. Too stressful, she said. You make enough for both of us, she reassured me. And I did. At first, I told myself it was temporary, that she'd find something else, something she enjoyed. But weeks turned into months, and the only thing she invested her time into was brunches with friends, online shopping, and posting filtered snapshots of her effortlessly perfect life. That night, I had brought up something small, a conversation about being more conscious with our spending. Maybe we should slow down a little, I had said, rubbing the back of my neck, already anticipating her sigh of annoyance. Slow down how? She asked without looking up from her screen. You know, just be a little more mindful. I've been handling all the bills lately, and things are adding up. That was when she interrupted me. Love isn't a transaction. She said it so smoothly, as if it was supposed to shut down the conversation entirely. I stared at her, waiting for her to elaborate. Nothing. No acknowledgement of what I had been doing. No appreciation for the hours I put in to keep her comfortable. No gratitude. No concern. Just indifference. That was when something inside me shifted. I had always thought of love as a partnership. A give and take. It didn't have to be equal at all times, but it had to be balanced. And yet, here I was, giving, while she sat back and reassured herself that none of it mattered. It was easy to say love wasn't transactional when she was the one benefiting from everything I provided. For the first time in years, I looked at her and saw the brutal reality of our marriage. I wasn't a husband to her anymore. I was an asset. And if love wasn't a transaction, then maybe it was time I stopped investing entirely. The night she said, "Love isn't a transaction," I didn't argue. I didn't get angry. I didn't even respond. I just nodded, sat down at the kitchen table, and let her words sink in like a slow poison. Because, for years, I had made transactions in this marriage. Not just financial ones, though those were significant, but emotional, physical, and mental investments that went unnoticed. And now, for the first time, I started wondering what would happen if I stopped. I thought about the nights I stayed late at the office, pushing through exhaustion, just so we could afford the life she wanted. I thought about how she used to work, before she decided she deserved better than a 9 to 5. Before she told me she needed a break from the stress of a job she never really tried at in the first place. At first, I supported her. Take your time, I said. Find something you love. Then months passed. No job interviews. No resume updates. Just long afternoons spent at cafes with friends, shopping bags accumulating in our closet, her side of the wardrobe expanding while mine stayed the same. I told myself I didn't mind. I told myself I was doing what a good husband does, taking care of my wife, giving her the space to figure things out. But now, sitting at that table, staring at my bank app and the steady outflow of money, I felt the resentment creeping in. The first thing I did was simple. I stopped the unnecessary spending. No more impulsive online orders. No more automatic payments for her gym membership that she hadn't used in months. No more premium hair salon appointments that cost more than my car insurance. I didn't make a big deal out of it. I didn't announce it. I just stopped paying for things that only benefited her. The first time she noticed, it was subtle. I was in the living room, pretending to watch TV when she called out from the kitchen. Hey, did my skincare subscription get canceled? I took a sip of my drink before answering. Yeah, I turned off some of the auto-pay charges. Just cleaning up unnecessary expenses. She appeared in the doorway, hands on her hips, her lips already forming that pout she used when she wanted something. You could have told me. I shrugged. Figured you'd notice. She frowned but let it go. But I wasn't done. The next cut was bigger. Her credit card, the one I had been paying off every month, was next. I didn't cancel it. I just stopped covering the balance. A week later, she stormed into the house, phone in hand, looking genuinely shocked. My card got declined, she said, her voice laced with irritation. Did something happen? I looked at her like I didn't understand the question. Yeah, I stopped making payments on it. Her expression flickered between disbelief and anger. You what? I stopped covering your extra spending, I said, my tone even. If love isn't a transaction, then you don't need me funding your lifestyle, right? I could tell she didn't like that answer. Her lips pressed together. That's different, she muttered. How? I asked, genuinely curious. She didn't have an answer. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about effort. For years, I had carried the weight of our marriage, not just financially, but emotionally. I was the one who made sure she felt special. The one who planned dates, remembered anniversaries, brought home flowers just because. The one who kissed her goodnight, even when she barely looked up from her phone. So I stopped. I stopped planning dinner dates. I stopped checking in on her day when she never asked about mine. I stopped initiating physical affection, the stolen kisses, the touches as I walked past, the hugs she barely reciprocated. And just like with the finances, it took her a while to notice. At first, she didn't care. She was still comfortable, still assuming I'd eventually go back to normal. But then, the silence between us started to stretch. One night, she turned to me in bed, scrolling through her phone like always, and said, "You've been kind of distant lately." I kept my eyes on the book I was reading. Have I? She set her phone down. Yeah, you don't really talk to me much anymore. I turned the page. Didn't think you'd notice. She scoffed. Of course I notice. But the truth was, she hadn't, not until it affected her. That was the thing about my wife. She had gotten so used to being loved effortlessly that she never once questioned whether she deserved it. She thought affection was her right. That attention was something she could take, not something she had to earn. For years, I had poured love into her without expecting much in return. But now, for the first time, she was seeing what life looked like when that well ran dry. And she didn't like it. At first, she tried denial, telling herself I was just tired, stressed, or going through a phase. Then came the small tests. She'd randomly come and sit next to me on the couch, leaning in slightly, waiting for me to wrap my arm around her like I used to. I didn't. She'd ask, "Want to order takeout tonight?" Our old tradition. I shrugged. "Order whatever you want." She'd linger at the bedroom door before bed, expecting me to invite her in for a hug, a kiss, something. But I just said, "Good night," and turned over. The cracks were forming. She could feel the distance growing, but she didn't know how to fix it. Because, for the first time, the problem wasn't me not doing enough. The problem was her never doing anything at all. And now, as she sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone, pretending everything was fine, I saw it, the first flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. She was starting to realize that she had made a mistake, that maybe love wasn't a transaction, but partnership was. And for the first time in years, she was on the losing end of the deal. She still thought this was temporary. At first, she chalked it up to me being in a mood, maybe work stress, maybe a midlife crisis. She expected me to snap out of it, to go back to the way things were. But I didn't. And with each passing day, the gap between us widened. She had spent years taking my effort, my time, my affection, my money, without ever thinking about what it would mean if I stopped. And now? Now she was learning what it felt like to be the one left empty-handed. It started small. She came home one afternoon, shopping bags in hand, and tossed them onto the counter. "Can you transfer some money to my account?" My card got declined again. I barely looked up from my laptop. "Oh, that's weird." She sighed, like I was being difficult on purpose. "Yeah, well, I need to pay for this stuff." I didn't move. "Then maybe you shouldn't have bought it." She stared at me like I had spoken a foreign language. "What?" she scoffed. "You always cover this stuff." I shrugged. "Not anymore." Her face turned red. "You're being ridiculous." "No," I said, my voice even. "I'm just taking your advice. Love isn't a transaction, right?" For the first time, I saw it, a flicker of something in her eyes. Not anger, not defiance, fear. She had built her entire identity on the life I provided. Brunches, spa days, shopping trips. But that lifestyle wasn't cheap. And now that she was on her own financially, the cracks were showing. Her friends started noticing. I overheard a conversation she had on the phone one evening. "Yeah, I don't know. Money's been kind of tight lately. No, I'm fine. It's just, ugh, it's complicated. She laughed awkwardly, but there was no real humor in it. I mean, I can still come out, but maybe we could do something low-key this time. Low-key. She was testing the waters, seeing if she could still keep up her image without actually admitting she wasn't in control anymore. But her friends weren't used to this version of her. One by one, the invitations started drying up. She was the fun one, the one who always suggested extravagant plans, the one who never hesitated to split the bill or grab an extra round of drinks. Now she was dead weight. And just like that, the people she thought were her closest friends became distant. She spent more time at home, more time scrolling through her phone, staring at the screen like it could somehow solve her problems. And I just watched. The real panic set in when she realized I wasn't just pulling back financially. I was gone emotionally, too. She had taken my affection for granted, never once considering what it would feel like when I stopped caring. One night, she slid onto the couch beside me, curling up close like she used to. I didn't react. I didn't put my arm around her. I didn't pull her in. I just sat there, staring at the TV. She shifted, waiting for me to respond. Nothing. Finally, she cleared her throat. "You okay?" she asked hesitantly. I turned my head slightly, as if noticing her for the first time. "Yeah. What?" She searched my face, like she was trying to find something that wasn't there anymore. "I don't know, you've been acting weird." "Weird?" I repeated. She nodded. "Distant." I shrugged. "Guess I've just been focusing on myself." Her lips pressed together. "You used to talk to me." I exhaled slowly. "Yeah, I used to do a lot of things." She didn't know what to say to that. And for the first time in years, I saw something in her I had never seen before. Insecurity. She was losing me. And she knew it. She started trying. At first, it was subtle. She asked about my day. She made small talk. She even cooked dinner a couple of times, something she hadn't done in years. But it was too little, too late. One night, she walked into the bedroom in lingerie, something I hadn't seen her wear in a long time. She leaned against the doorframe, biting her lip. "Hey, stranger." I looked up from my book, my face unreadable. She stepped closer, running a hand over my chest. "I feel like we've been so disconnected lately." I let out a soft chuckle. "Huh. Weird." She blinked. "What's so funny?" I set my book down and met her gaze. "You've spent years acting like my affection was optional," I said. "Like you could take it or leave it whenever you want it. And now that it's gone, suddenly you want it." Her face fell. I never meant." "But you did," I interrupted. "You told me yourself. Love isn't a transaction." She swallowed hard, her confidence cracking. I leaned in slightly, my voice dropping. "So tell me, sweetheart, if love isn't a transaction, why are you trying to buy it back now?" She didn't have an answer. And for the first time, I saw a real regret in her eyes. She spent the next few weeks trying to fix things. She cleaned more, cooked more, tried to be affectionate. But she didn't understand something crucial. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was done. She had mistaken my silence for temporary detachment. But I wasn't detached. I was free. And that terrified her more than anything. Because for the first time, she understood what she had lost. But it was already too late. She finally cracked. For weeks, she had been trying. Fumbling through forced conversations, making half-hearted gestures, attempting to undo years of neglect with a few desperate efforts. But nothing worked. Because I wasn't waiting to be won back. I had already moved on, mentally, emotionally, and soon, physically. And the moment she realized that was the moment she truly fell apart. It happened on a Saturday night. She had just come back from dinner with a friend. A friend who, I was sure, had noticed the weight loss, the stress on her face, the dark circles under her eyes. Because unlike before, when she had been carefree, pampered, and untouched by the struggles of everyday life, Now she looked like someone who was drowning. I was in the bedroom, folding some clothes, when she walked in. She closed the door behind her, something she hadn't done in a long time. Then she just stood there, arms crossed, watching me. I knew what was coming. I could feel it, the final attempt, the last gamble. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice quieter than usual. I didn't stop folding. "We're talking." "No, I mean, really talk." I sighed, placing a shirt down. Then I finally looked at her. "All right. Talk." She hesitated, like she didn't know where to start. Then she swallowed hard and said the words I had been expecting for weeks. "I don't want to lose you." I stared at her for a moment, expression unreadable. She took a cautious step forward. I know things have been bad, she continued, her voice trembling slightly. I know I messed up. I've been selfish. Her voice broke. She took another step closer. But I don't want this to end. I love you. Love. That word felt empty now. Because love wasn't just a word, it was action. And she had never acted like she loved me until she felt me slipping away. I didn't react. I didn't rush to reassure her. Instead, I tilted my head slightly. You love me. She nodded, almost frantic. Yes. Yes, of course. I let out a slow breath, then looked down, gathering my thoughts. Finally, I spoke. No, you don't. Her face twisted. What? I met her eyes, my voice calm. You don't love me, I repeated. You loved what I did for you. You loved the life I gave you. You loved the fact that you never had to worry about money, or responsibility, or effort. She shook her head, her lips parting as if to protest. But I didn't let her. You loved that I paid for everything. That I made your life easy. That I gave you security while you gave me the bare minimum in return. She blinked rapidly, her hands trembling now. That's not true. Yes, it is, I said, my voice firm. And that's why you're scared. Not because you love me, but because, for the first time, you have to stand on your own. Silence. She stood there, breathing hard, her face pale. And then, just like that, the mask slipped. She wasn't crying because she was losing me. She was crying because she was losing her security. Because the moment she truly understood I wasn't coming back was the moment she lost control. She lunged forward suddenly, gripping my shirt, looking up at me with wild desperation. I'll change, she whispered. I swear, I'll change. I'll get a job. I'll help around the house. I gently removed her hands from my shirt. You shouldn't have to be losing me to finally try. That was when she really broke. Her knees buckled, and she sank down onto the floor, sobbing, clutching at my leg like a lifeline. I don't know what to do, she wept. Please. I don't know how to fix this. I looked down at her, feeling nothing. Not anger. Not satisfaction. Just clarity. Because this was never about love. This was about dependence. And now that her provider was gone, she had nothing left. I crouched down beside her, waiting until she finally lifted her teary, swollen eyes to mine. And I told her the truth. I'm leaving. Her breath hitched. No. No, please. It's already done. The words hit her like a physical blow. She choked on a sob, gripping my arm like it would somehow change things. I'll be different, she whispered, her voice broken. Please, I just need another chance. But I shook my head. No, sweetheart. I gently removed her grip from my arm. You needed another chance years ago. She sat there, crumpled on the floor, as I stood up. I grabbed my bag, the one I had packed earlier that day, and then I walked toward the door. She didn't chase after me. She didn't scream or beg anymore. She just sat there, shaking, fully realizing that she had finally lost everything she had taken for granted. I stepped out of the house, inhaling the crisp night air. And for the first time in years, I felt free. Walking away should have been difficult. But it wasn't. Not when I had already spent years in a marriage where I was nothing more than a provider, an investment she assumed would never dry up. She thought she had all the time in the world. She thought I would never leave. And now, for the first time in her life, she was truly alone. 1 month after I left. The first few weeks were quiet. She didn't call, didn't text. At first, I thought maybe she was just too angry or too proud to reach out. But deep down, I knew the truth. She was waiting for me to miss her, waiting for me to realize what I lost and come crawling back. But I didn't miss her. I missed who I thought she was, the woman I had once believed I was building a life with. The woman who, in reality, had never existed. Her life without me. Then, the cracks in her life started to show. I started hearing things. A mutual friend mentioned that she was stressed, that her bills were piling up, that she had been forced to start looking for a job after years of avoiding it. Another said she had tried reaching out to some of our old friends for help, but they weren't eager to step in, because they all knew the truth. She wasn't used to giving. She was used to taking. And now? Now she had nothing to take from anyone. Her lifestyle, the expensive outings, the shopping, the luxuries was all gone. She had thought she was independent. She had thought that love wasn't a transaction. And yet, for the first time, she was realizing just how much I had given. My life without her. Me? I thrived. I moved into a new place, a place that felt like mine, not just another thing I was funding for someone else. I started going out more. I reconnected with friends I had neglected, people I had lost touch with because I had spent too much time trying to hold together a marriage that was already dead. I focused on myself. I invested in my own happiness, something I hadn't done in years. And for the first time, I felt light, weightless, like I had been carrying a burden I didn't even realize was crushing me. And now, I was free. Her breaking point. Then, one night, the call came. I was sitting at my kitchen table, sipping a drink, watching the city lights through my window when my phone buzzed. Her name. I stared at the screen for a long moment before answering. Silence. Then, finally, her voice, soft, hesitant. Hey. I didn't respond right away. Hey. A shaky inhale. How are you? I almost laughed. The absurdity of it. Like we were old friends catching up. Like she hadn't spent years taking me for granted. I let the silence stretch until she finally broke. I miss you, she admitted, her voice cracking. I swirled the drink in my glass. Do you? Yes. A breath. I was stupid. I didn't realize. You didn't realize what? I interrupted. My voice wasn't angry. Just tired. More silence. Then, how much you did for me. I closed my eyes briefly, letting the words sink in. Not how much she loved me. Not how much she valued me as a person. Just how much I had done for her. The realization she should have had years ago. Too little, too late. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'll be better. I swear. I don't want to lose you. I let out a slow breath. You lost me a long time ago, I said. You just didn't notice until it affected you. She let out a shaky sob. I can fix this, she begged. I just need a chance. I shook my head. No, sweetheart. You needed another chance years ago. I could hear her crying softly on the other end. But it didn't affect me, because I had already mourned the loss of this marriage. I had already moved on, and now it was her turn to feel what it was like to be left behind. I didn't drag it out. I didn't offer her false hope. I didn't let her believe there was any way back. Instead, I just said the words that finally ended everything. Take care of yourself. Then I hung up, and I never answered her calls again. She had been right about one thing. Love isn't a transaction, but partnership is. And the moment she stopped contributing, the moment she treated my love as something she could take for granted, she lost everything. Because I wasn't an investment that would keep paying out forever. And by the time she realized that, it was already too late.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.